Now, Israel is home to a mixed population, which includes about 20% ethnic Arabs, many of whom identify as Palestinians, and they often face discrimination. With tensions in the region once again flaring, one group of activists in Israel is trying to promote solidarity across ethnic lines. DW's Aya Ibrahim reports from Haifa.
A sight to behold.
This room contains right now Palestinians and Jews who actually, in the darkest, most polarizing, most difficult moment in the history of the two peoples right now, is choosing to actually work together.
They want to send a message they feel cannot be repeated enough.
We cannot survive if we will be against each other. We cannot survive if someone will try to, kick the other out. In this country, millions of Palestinians will remain here, and millions of Jewish people will remain here, and that's a fact.
This meeting at a mosque in Haifa is organized by Standing Together, a grassroots peace movement made up of Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel. Activists tell me such togetherness has been rare since the October 7th Hamas attacks, and that often demonstrations of solidarity in either direction are met with rejection.
We have friends, we have neighbors, we have peers, we have colleagues who are Jewish who got deeply impacted by this. And we were devastated by the attack. But even that was not something that was fully accepted by a lot of the Jewish public. Oh, you're hurting for us now, but so you can't identify as Palestinian.
But also in Gaza, there are children, which is something very controversial right now to say in Israel. We do suffer from calls for violence, from being called being a traitor, from incitement against us Jewish people that are working towards peace, that are working to build solidarity among Jews and Palestinians.
The fact that we are even unable to fully experience and grieve our people is like the epitome of our psychosis and our experience as Palestinians in Israel. I'm literally unable to fully grieve my people, while also you're on a mission to convince people you're human.
People here believe deepening divisions in Israeli society make it all the more important to meet and to show empathy with one another. So they put that empathy, quite literally, center stage. In defiance of local right-wing groups which tried to get the event cancelled. It's happening under tight security. It's more than just talk, though. Volunteers visit places where Muslims and Jews work together, like this hospital near Haifa. They handed out thank you cards to staff, written in Arabic and Hebrew. Tamara Asadi is a Palestinian Israeli teacher who works at a predominantly Jewish school.
It is important for me to be a role model for my students, for my country, and everyone around me. I choose to be here because I'm convinced that we have to improve our relationship. We have to protect it. We have to look at each other as human beings.
The visit is happening 1 month after the October 7th terror attack.
And it's a very difficult day for all of us. But it's so important to remark the fact that we are together in the staff here and many other places. We are doing very, very naturally togetherness.
They've also set up a hotline offering legal support for Palestinian Israelis who've lost jobs or suffered discrimination since October 7th. Standing Together members have even taken the name literally and formed human chains around businesses to protect them from hate attacks.
What about Jewish people like yourself?
Back at the assembly, I ask Alon Lee Green if he feels their movement speaks for the majority in Israeli society.
No. But do all the society, the majority of society, have the interest of the direction we want to go? I think the answer is yes. So that means our job, the mission, the responsibility we took upon our shoulders is to organize this majority into a political majority. And it's going to be a very long way.
They know there's more work to do. After the speeches, attendees break up into small groups. They brainstorm more practical ways they might spread their message and to convince more of their fellow Israelis to see each other the way they do.
Let's speak to Aya Ibrahim, who filed that report, joining me now from Jerusalem. Aya, at the end of your report there, we saw Jewish and Palestinian Israelis brainstorming together to find ways to stand together and spread their message. What did they come up with?
Well, what they've established is what they call the Jewish Arab Solidarity Guard. So, for example, they told me about a hummus place in Haifa. A longstanding establishment has been there for about 40 years. It's Palestinian owned, and on the door of that establishment, there's a verse in the Quran had always been there. Palestinians and Jews visit that restaurant often. After the October 7th attacks, some right-wing groups claimed that verse of the Quran was somehow, sympathizing with Hamas or inciting attacks against Jewish people, and that establishment came under attack. And so what the group did is put together a human chain around that restaurant to protect the owner. And when they do these human chain acts, this guard, which is an unarmed guard, they're just standing there to protect establishments that have long been part of their mixed communities. They always do this together. These groups are always a mix between Jewish Israeli activists and Arab or Palestinian activists, depending on how they identify themselves.
Now, we saw in your report that this group's meeting took place under tight security. Can you tell us more about what kind of challenges Palestinian Israelis are facing in the current climate?
Right. I mean, let's just take a step back and, who are these Palestinian Israelis that we're talking about? This is the largest ethnic minority in Israel. These are full Israeli citizens. They can vote. They can run for office. They're just like their Jewish counterparts in many ways, except they do sometimes face discrimination within society. So they are Israeli citizens, but at the same time, they are part of the larger Palestinian nation, if you will. So they may have relatives or friends with Palestinians in the diaspora, but they also may have friends or family in Gaza or in the West Bank. And so when you have a situation like this, like the horrible attack of October 7th and the war that then ensued in Gaza, they're in between these two identities, if you will. They're part of Israeli society, so they have friends that are Jewish, they have friends that have been affected by the terror attacks, and they also have friends, people that they can relate to in Palestinian territories. And so they're often looked at least that's what the activists that I've spoken to tell me, with a sort of suspicion that they don't have their loyalties with Israel, but they do, as far as I could tell, and as far as what the people that I've spoken to tell me. And so oftentimes if they express solidarity with civilians in Gaza, not Hamas, civilians in Gaza, they are accused of supporting a terror organization, which they say, of course, they do not. And there have been some cases in Israeli society, unfortunately, since the October 7th attack, where students are subject to disciplinary hearings and people are, fired from their jobs or having difficulty at work for sympathizing with the Palestinian side of their identity publicly on social media. And that's created a lot of fear among Israel's Palestinian Arab community. I mean, we had quite a bit of difficulty getting Palestinian Israeli voices on camera, but luckily we did have a few, as you saw in that report. And something that they told me, activists, both Jewish and Palestinian, is that they wish that the media would look more about what life is actually like between these two communities within Israel, that there's a specific, very one-sided idea in the media about what's going on in this country, and of course there's war, there's suffering, but there's also a coexistence between these two groups that has been going on for generations, and that they felt that was also worth highlighting, and that's at least what we tried to show in that report. There are a lot of difficulties, of course, a lot of challenges, discrimination. It's a conflict zone, but the reality on the ground every day is a little bit more gray than that, I would say.
Well, thank you very much for your reporting. That's DW's Aya Ibrahim in Jerusalem.